All right, we're going to go ahead and get the meeting started, the hearing, and thank y'all for being here. We're going to begin with Mr. Dusty Brighton from the American Distilled Spirits Alliance. He came over yesterday, and I didn't have him on the agenda, but I wanted to give him a chance to speak real quick. So, Dusty, if you would please come to the podium, and the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to be here today and indulging me for a few minutes. I do appreciate it. Members of the committee, on behalf of my client, the American Distilled Spirits Alliance, I respectfully submit the following comment on behalf of the Alliance and Matt DeGali. I thank the committee for allowing me to participate here today. ADSA is a trade association of 27 member companies with common interest in the manufacturing, importation, and marketing of distilled spirit products across the United States. ADSA members produce approximately 2/3 of all the distilled spirits currently sold in the U.S. and Mississippi. Previously known as the President's Forum of the distilled spirits industry, ADSA traces its history back for 40 years. One of the long-standing core principles of ADSA is supporting control states like Mississippi. We have excellent relationships with the Mississippi ABC and the National Alcohol Beverage Control Association, the national association that represents control states. I mention this to highlight our desire to continue to lend support as Mississippi works to address their current warehousing issues. We recognize and have for some time that the current ABC warehouse is dated and struggling to keep up with consumer demand. ADSA and several other beverage alcohol trade associations were supportive of previous efforts by the legislature to appropriate funds to secure a new warehouse and improve logistics. While that effort obviously did not come to pass, we feel the intent was very correct. We understand many ideas are currently being explored as potential solutions. After discussions with Discus, who you heard from yesterday, another spirits trade association, we think the below are all viable options that other states have executed well in recent years. The state could fund construction of a new warehouse and also fund logistical operation improvements to modernize and improve efficiency, which would increase revenue, like Virginia. The state could procure, build a new warehouse, and outsource operations and logistics similar to the state of Ohio. And finally, the state could outsource both warehousing and logistics, which was mentioned yesterday, while maintaining control of distribution, pricing, and profits. There may be other solutions that present themselves, but just to be clear, things like markup increases, fee increases, or other new supplier-paid fees to fund the warehouse project would be problematic for ADSA members, and we would more than likely oppose those efforts, particularly when there are other viable solutions. Again, I want to thank you for giving me a couple of minutes this morning and to participate on behalf of ADSA. We look forward to working with you throughout this process and are very hopeful we can find a quality resolution to serve the state of Mississippi for years to come. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee have a question? How many other control states are your members part of?
I believe there's 17 control states, is that right? But let me verify that and get back to you.
And I know y'all said you oppose all these ideas of either fee increases or whatever, but obviously Mississippi's not charging any bailment fees. Are the other states that y'all are members of charging bailment fees?
I believe that some states are charging bailment fees, which frankly we have opposed in the past.
Okay, but y'all are still operating in those states?
I'll get back to you on that. I imagine we are, but let me verify that for you.
One of the things that we had discussed yesterday was that in the past they did a bailment fee to help fund the actual construction of the center that they're currently operating in. Then the bailment fee went away. Did that proposition harm the businesses, or is that a model that y'all could look at?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from any committee members? All right. Thank you so much for being here. We got your letter. Members, I think you have a copy of it on your desk from Mr. Brighton. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
for being
Mr.
here.
Chairman.
And
I appreciate
any
it.
information to everybody here, I think, and I've spoken to Chairman Lamar about this, is possibly reconvening another meeting maybe in November after I think these meetings are going to probably create a lot more questions and answers, and we'll probably have a lot of action items that we'll want to work with DOR and ABC on, and maybe reconvene in November for a meeting to kind of follow up with some of the questions that we'll have after these hearings. So we'll probably, try to meet again later this year to talk about some of these options and continue to discuss what opportunities are out there for us. So please keep in touch with us, and we may need y'all some information and input again. So thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda, Mr. Stephen O'Neill from the Manship and Aplos.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, everyone, for the time and opportunity to speak here today. As previously stated, I stand here in support of optimizing the ABC. I feel that they are a great organization to work with. We still have private business enterprise, privatized distribution and sales. They are merely a facilitator of the product coming to us. As a representative of my restaurants and the Mississippi Restaurant Association, we've identified about 5 key issues that we would like to address, which is a more user-friendly ordering system, a more efficient process to do business with the ABC, not only in our respect, but with their inventory tracking and management, the accuracy of the shipments, so as they receive and get labeled by the ABC, because while there are codes on every box that comes to ABC, they get re-stickered again, and sometimes those stickers do not correlate with the product that's on there, and it's generally pretty easy to see when you got 2 different stickers and one says one and one says the other. But again, those are efficiency issues at the ABC. Faster shipment times is a concern of all of ours. Convenient delivery times. So in the restaurant business, we understand that these contract delivery services are just going to show up when they show up, but it's very impeding to our operations when you have a guy trying to roll in 30 cases of booze and you have 50 people standing at the front door and they're not always delivering to the rear door. Other statutes state that they have to be able to park the truck within 50 feet of the entrance. Well, at my restaurant, that's the front door. And so they're trying to roll cases in as guests are coming in for our lunch rush or dinner rush, and that can be impeding to our business. So if we could get a more standardized schedule of delivery before operations begin, middle of the day, those would be more conducive to our operations in the restaurant industry. And then breakage, an accountability format at ABC to help hold the contracted delivery services to a better standard of us getting our refunds and the processes there in place of how we annotate breakage, how it's submitted to their company for reimbursement, or whether that goes to ABC and we actually receive orders through an ordering system where we could check in the order and say we had X breakage, and then it's verified by documentation signed by the driver, signed by our manager on duty. Again, I've got a great relationship with the ABC. I feel that they do an amazing job with the amount of resources that they have at hand. Personally, I would love to see a ABC budget proportionate to the amount of revenue that they bring into DOR. Because I think if you look at how much revenue ABC generates versus the rest of DOR, and that percentage of budget, I think, is a little bit lopsided. And or split out ABC altogether from DOR and make it its own separate entity that has its own legislative budget. Again, thank y'all for your time today. Hope y'all have a great weekend. Yes, sir.
Question?
Yes, sir.
Everything that you just mentioned, is that mentioned, is this your letter? I haven't read it yet.
That is the letter from the Restaurant Association, yes, sir. A lot of that is mentioned in there, yes, sir.
Okay, well, the things you just said, that we could make things more business-friendly for our restaurants, I would appreciate if you could get us a copy of that,
Yes, sir.
something in writing.
We'll get that typed up.
One other question. In your experience with the restaurant business, do most restaurants, or let me back up, do you only buy from ABC or do you buy from other package stores?
I buy from both. So a lot of my high-moving case product, I buy through the ABC on a regular and consistent basis. I purchase a lot of select orders that aren't necessarily available to everyone, or because of broker relationships and winery relationships, I have product that may be offered to me exclusively. And so those are select orders that come through the special order process. I buy those through the ABC. Again, I've got over 1,000 SKUs, so the availability of product is there. It's maintaining the relationships with the brokers, the wineries, the distilleries, the people that I reach out to and connect with and put them with brokers that handle the product. It's not the ABC. It's just a matter of paperwork. But then I do a lot of purchasing as well through an independent wholesaler on the stuff that I just need 2s and 3s and 4s of.
Tell me, what is an independent wholesaler?
So I do a lot of my business with Tasho Katsaboulis. He'll speak. I mean, he's right around the corner. So if I run out of Grey Goose, I run over to his store. He's an authorized wholesaler. I also do a lot of business with Jamie Ferris down at Lincoln Road Package Store.
Is that pretty standard in the restaurant business, or do?
I think a lot of operators do operate with some variation of both, independent and ABC.
Senator Michelle, go ahead.
How much is the additional markup you would pay when you buy from a wholesaler versus through the ABC?
So it's about 10%.
And the convenience is worth it to you to pay that extra fee?
Yes,
Obviously,
sir.
sometimes you can't get it through the ABC if it happens in the afternoon in a rush hour at night.
But yes, it's worth it. I mean, one, there's a storage issue, and two, there's a cost analysis benefit. So if I buy a case of Macallan 12, and that's a $60-ish bottle wholesale, and that's a 6-bottle case, I'm tying up $360. So that cash is tied up until I can sell through that entire case versus buying one bottle at 10% markup and keeping more cash reserve on hand. Mm-hmm. And so it's easier for me to keep that cash on hand and have continual operating revenue and just rotate through that one bottle that may take a little bit of time versus tying it all up and having to hold on to 6 bottles.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? So the independent wholesalers that you are working with, in some states, they tend to promote those either by giving, which is kind of, based on the conversation we had yesterday with limits on case buying. Some states I've talked to folks where they try to incentivize that by either giving a discount to independent wholesalers to buy larger case numbers, where they kind of become these little mini distributors throughout the state. And which if they get it for a lower price, obviously they can offer it to restaurants and bars at a lower price, which takes some of the strain off of ABC, but then there becomes another issue with how they're going to get it delivered or how they go pick it up. Is there any weight to trying to do more of a incentivized distribution where you're pushing out larger caseloads to independent wholesalers throughout the state, and then you go into them? Would that be more convenient, or would that cause problems with availability of product?
I think it creates an unlevel playing field. I pretty much know that almost any wholesaler that I want to do business with, I'm going to pay the same thing versus having to shop out one of these, what I would call a tiered buyer like you're speaking of. And again, it's how much storage space do they have, or what brand are they choosing to provide loyalty to? Because again, at that point, I think you're going to run into stores that are Tito's heavy, so to speak, and they're going to carry 1,000 cases of Tito's and nothing else just because they'll have the market cornered. And if they could distribute Tito's statewide, they would as that independent wholesaler. But again, I think that's more of almost monopolizing certain stores to brand loyalty or other things versus just having the even playing field where everybody's buying and selling at the same cost.
Okay. Thank you for your answers. Any other questions from the committee? All right. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Next up, Mr. John Bean from Eat With Us Group.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me and allowing me to speak on behalf of restaurants and on-premise retailers in the state. I've been in business for 39 years. We have 8 restaurants that are on-premise retailers in North Mississippi and Columbus, Starkville, and Tupelo. We have enjoyed a good working relationship with the ABC through the years, whether it's permitting, enforcement, the warehouse. Everything has been good, and I would say top-notch. Pre-COVID, I would say that the operations were very good, organized, consistent, reliable. But since COVID, and I recognize that everybody's supply chain issues, labor issues, things have been disruptive, but it has been a challenge. Concerning the tap ordering system, our managers have learned to navigate it, but a more friendly and simple system would improve the accuracy of orders and cut down on mistakes. It would be great if there were options to order more items by the split case. One of the issues that Stephen was just speaking to about going to an independent wholesaler is that we've gone from 5 case minimum orders to 10 case minimum orders. And that has created issues as far as storage goes, and an on-premise retailer is getting 12 to 15 to 18 sales per fifth or liter versus a package store that is selling it by the bottle. So we don't have to hold as much inventory to do our sales, but the increase in or the decrease in what we can buy as far as split cases goes has really affected us. As far as the delivery system goes, Shippers Express did a very good job. We became familiar with our drivers. They worked with us to accommodate the times that were convenient for us. The drivers were careful with our products and genuinely concerned with doing a good job, putting product where it belonged, not interrupting our business or coming in during high volume times. The new trucking company, Douglas Express Delivery, has drivers that are much younger. They do not seem to be concerned about the well-being of our business. They stack things haphazardly, are rough with product. Some of our higher-end wines and spirits cost several $100s a case. We've had many issues with breakage since DED took over. And that may be kind of a learning curve. I think it was unfortunate that that happened during COVID, that change happened. With Shippers Express, we felt like we were the customer, and it is not that way with DED. It's pretty much you take it, or they'll leave it. They'll leave it right out front. Pre-COVID, availability of our best-selling products was rarely an issue. The issue we ran into most often was there being no communication when a product was being delisted or moved to special order. Basically, what would happen is that when we update our beverage programs twice a year, and so we're changing products. We print menus, and a lot of times we would print a menu and then find out shortly after that a product had been delisted and was not available anymore. The only way that we could find out is if we had good relationships with brokers. We don't see brokers up in North Mississippi as often as the Jackson area restaurants and all do. So it takes us pushing communication with them to know when something is not moving well enough to stay in the warehouse or even on bailment. There have been issues with mispicks with the warehouse. I do think that is a COVID related issue. It was not as bad pre-COVID. And just some constructive recommendations I'd like to make are to get our delivery times back to 2 to 3 days. Being 3 weeks out on deliveries is hard, and just keeping up with what is ordered as you're placing orders. My restaurants, we inventory every 2 weeks. We place an order every 2 weeks on Monday. We have specific par levels, build levels that we try to build to, and it was a challenge. It is a challenge to know what is ordered and then what you need to order. As we have seen more items go to split cases, it would be great to have, or fewer split cases, it would be great to have more split cases. Better communication and customer service with the ABC would be very helpful. Almost if the ABC could have sales reps that had territories that worked with restaurants and could visit locations, could address ordering issues, deliveries, credits, whatever. Right now, it's an email, it's a phone call. Phone calls are challenging to get through. Even if there could possibly be a restaurant division of the ABC. I realize that we do not, on-premise retailers do not move near as much product as the package stores do. But it would be great to have a point person there for us to deal with, to talk about the concerns that we have, things that are happening in our industry and all. It would be great to have better notification of items that are going to be delisted or taken off off the product guide that we could buy. Then just finally, I realize that restaurants make up a small percentage of the cases that are shipped by the ABC. I would hope that the ABC and Department of Revenue and this ABC study group would recognize that restaurants in the state are very important to the image of a progressive Mississippi. Our guests' taste and appetite for new wines and distilled spirits are diverse and continue to grow. My hope is that the ABC will grow in its operations to help us meet the demands of our guests, and that the legislature and the ABC will give the ABC the funding needed to meet restaurants and package stores' demands. I also recognize that COVID has disrupted all types of operations, and I appreciate the challenges we all face today with the supply chain and labor. I started telling you that I've been in business it'll be 39 years in February, and probably the best lesson that I've learned in my 39 years of business is that my business will grow to the level that I service it. And I just ask that you fund the ABC to help me grow my business. Fund them so we can continue to grow this business. Thank you.
Thank you. John, what restaurants do you have? And I asked that because I wanted to kind of get the variation of what type of food and what type of.
Sure. We have Harvey's in Columbus, Starkville, Tupelo. We have the grills in Columbus, Starkville, Tupelo. It's Fair Park Grill, Central Station Grill, and Jackson Square Grill. And then we have Bulldog Burger in Starkville and Tupelo.
Okay. As far as delisting the product, maybe this is a question for Meg and Chris. Is there a time of the year that you do this, or is this just kind of as a product? If you get notified, do you get notified from the vendor that they're not going to be able to supply the product? Is that what goes into delisting a product?
It's based on sales through the warehouse, and I don't remember the exact number that it's got to meet, but they're delisted as they don't meet the quota that we set.
Our sales volumes for spirits and wine. Twice a year, we do one in February, August.
Okay, so you do them twice a year. So, all right. All right. Are there any other questions from the committee? Representative Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Mean. I appreciate you coming today. Sure. I want to ask you a little bit about your concerns about the delivery times. I've had a lot of that from my folks back home. What is a manageable time frame that you say, you've been in this business a long time, that you can manage? You say 2 weeks is certainly outside that. You'd like to see 3 days. But what is the time frame that you say we can live with this? Is it 7 days, 6 days, or what?
Well, I will tell you that pre-COVID, we could place an order Monday by 3 o'clock, and that order we were getting it on Wednesday or Thursday.
Well,
But a manageable time would be within a week, yes.
pre-COVID, were you having, let's say over 10 years prior to that, were you having any delivery problems that you're getting now during the COVID pandemic?
No. I
Okay,
mean, as
so-
far as the amount of time it took to get from the time you ordered it until it was delivered, no. I mean, occasionally, but very rarely.
So you attribute a substantial portion of your delivery problems to the COVID?
Well, that, and I'm assuming it's the demand has increased at the warehouse, and that has caused issues with getting it out, getting it in
Well,
and
what I
getting it
mean is
out.
that could have been primarily, I mean, we don't know. Hopefully that doesn't subside, but right now it appears that the COVID pandemic is creating some of the additional pressure on the warehouse. Would that be a fair statement?
Sure.
All right, and I assume since you have these restaurants in a number of locations, the enforcement portion of the ABC, you're satisfied that they operate fairly and even-handedly across enforcement, things of that
Absolutely.
nature? You have no issues with enforcement?
We have good relationships with our agents in the field. They communicate well with us. We see them a couple of times a year. If they have a question about how we're operating, they come see us. But yes,
But you have no issues with that aspect of the agency?
no.
Okay, but your main issues are basically being able to manage your business model based on knowing when something's going to show up, things of that nature.
Right.
Let me ask you this. If you have something that's delisted, you still have access to that product at all in Mississippi, or you do not?
Well, you have access to the inventory that's left.
Right.
I mean, it may be delisted. You may find some in a package store that's a wholesaler or whatever, but I don't believe you can. I think you might be able to special order it. That can take 3 to 6 weeks lead time. It's for restaurants like mine, it's hard to have special order items, on our list.
Have you had anything delisted that was a profitable item for you that you, I understand there's high-end items that the ABC, you got volume products that you really need that space for, and I understand their position too about activity and what they need, limited space. But do you have an option we could look at to make sure those profitable items that are coming that you had, that you're losing, that you could have access to?
We do the same thing. I mean, twice a year, I'm looking at, I draw a line, and the slow movers are things that we take off the menu. That's what they're taking out of the warehouse. I think what would help is just letting us know
In
60
advance.
days out, giving us some more notice about what is going to be delisted would help us manage it better. So I understand when you've got slow-moving items, you've got to move on to the next. There's new products coming out, and there's a limited amount of warehouse space and things like that. So I think you've got to do that. It's just the time frame that we need to know sooner about things that are going to be delisted.
Okay, and the shipping contract you're saying that's currently in place now, you're not satisfied with it? Is that what you were telling me?
Not at all.
Okay, and how long have they been shipping through ABC?
A couple of months.
July 1st. Okay. Would it be, I don't know this is even possible through current code or not, what would be a problem with, let's say, if we continue the problem? It doesn't sound like we're going to continue having a problem with delivery if we have the COVID subsides, but if we continue demand, we might. What would be problematic with having you have so many deliveries a year that you could go pick it up at the warehouse, delivered? You could just say, would that, I understand you've got a product that's bonded and things of that nature,
Right.
but is anything that you would have a problem with doing that?
Well, I'm in Columbus, Starkville, and Tupelo, and the warehouse is in Gluckstadt.
So I'm just saying, if you've got something, you don't want to wait 2 weeks, you're going to Jackson and you
Right.
could arrange, I'm
I
just
mean,
throwing it
I
out.
can tell you that Cisco, US Foods, they have will call. Yes, I mean, you can call in an order and go pick it up. And I don't know how practical that would be for their operations or not, but, you know,
If we looked at making changes to the ABC warehouse, or we provided funding to do upgrades that we desperately need to do, would that be something that you think the restaurant owners and package store owners would like to have in part of the upgrades, that there's a possibility of the will call type?
yes, I'm sure that the Jackson
I don't
area.
see, that's what I'm saying, I don't know why someone necessarily have to wait for 2 weeks to get something that's 2 miles from them. And I understand you have challenges getting down here, but there could be opportunities for a group of y'all to do certain things. But I understand
Yeah.
that they're contracts. I'm just
Well,
saying, if
the-
we continue to have some of the issues that we have now.
Yes, I think that would be a good option, but I also think that the creation of us being able to go to a package store that is a wholesaler
Better.
has relieved that situation.
Okay, well,
you know.
that's what I was going to ask you next. Has the option to go into the package store eliminated that situation?
It has.
That stress on your business model?
It does cost more, and it is inconvenient. I mean, I can tell you that in my restaurants, I don't want my managers running to the grocery store or running to the liquor store. They need to be in the business, and so it's much more efficient for us to be able to place an order, you know, have specific build levels or par levels in our storerooms and build to that every 2 weeks, and it's a better way to run your business. But the ability to go helps. You know, the ability to go to a package store does help.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bean, so you talk about the taste of some of your customers changing, and you'd like to have the ability to respond to that with product that you can put on your shelves or offer at your restaurants. So is that a big problem for you in terms of, you know, if you don't get the volume of requests up for this cognac or this bottle of wine, is it difficult to order it through ABC?
No, I mean, the special order option is a good option, and for like Stephen at Manship, I mean, and the product lines or the inventory that he carries, I'm sure he does not mind doing that. The type of restaurants that I am, you know, I'm looking at I'm following trends and things, and when I'm talking about that, it's, you know, and new products and what our guests are asking for. I'm kind of following trends. Stephen's leading trends, and I just want to make sure that the product's available, you know, that it's coming to the warehouse, that our brokers and, you know, that Mississippi is getting their allocation of those things so that we can meet that demand.
Have you had the occasion to visit the ABC warehouse?
I have not.
Okay, so you couldn't comment on issues regarding mechanization and speed of process, but as far as how the warehouse operates from a physical standpoint?
No, I can't, and I probably wouldn't be a good person to advise them on that. So
Do you favor any privatization or the establishment of a quasi-public-private authority?
No, I'll tell you, I like our system, you know, and it worked well for us. I mean, you know, really, just take COVID out of this. It's a good system, and I think the markups are fair. I think our consumer, you know, if you travel and if you go to Birmingham or Memphis or New Orleans, you pay more for distilled. For a cocktail or a glass or bottle of wine, it costs more, and I think we have a good, efficient system. I just think that demand is growing, and we need the ABC to grow to meet that demand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Horn. Senator Chazanal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question might be better addressed to Chris, but I was curious, what percentage of ABC sales do the restaurants represent?
I don't have that figure, but we can get it for you.
The reason I ask that is that it was just brought up that maybe the restaurateurs deserved a special contact person at ABC. I mean, the idea of product that just vanishes from the list is a little scary because, having been in the restaurant business myself, people become very territorial. They come to a certain place because of a certain signature dish or a signature cocktail or perhaps a wine that is a favorite of theirs, and it's all part of the experience. It's not just going in and having a drink or eating a meal, it's the experience. And that's what restaurateurs are selling. And I've been talking to a number of my friends in the restaurant business, and it's frightening to know how many may not make it through this COVID stuff. And so I hate to think that the state of Mississippi was also sticking a knife in the back of the restaurant business. I would love to know what the percentage of restaurant sales, what the percentage of ABC total sales the restaurant business account for. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Bean, thank you so much for coming down today. I appreciate it. Next up is Mr. Charles Frazier from Weidman's.
Thanks for having me. My name is Charles Frazier, and I currently serve as Vice President of the Restaurant Association. I'm also the President of the Meridian Chapter. I own Weidman's Restaurant, and we are a 125-seat restaurant with banquet facilities for an additional 140 guests. We also have 2 bars that can accommodate a further 100 patrons for a total seating of about 365. We hold both an on-premise liquor permit and also a catering liquor permit. We currently stock about 150 different types of liquor and over 100 different wines, all obviously purchased through ABC. I've managed restaurants in Tennessee and Louisiana where we purchase directly through sales reps. I believe that we have a better system than that for purchasing most beverages, as it is centralized and all brands are under one roof. The exception to this advantage is the purchase of special orders, which require direct communication with a liquor brand representative who then submits the order to ABC, and the product is then shipped to us, the permit holder. This can result in even greater wait times for product, as well as introducing an additional human element that can create, and does unfortunately, mistakes. A major concern among restaurateurs that I've spoken with in Meridian, I spoke to about 6 of them, is the decline of offerings for split cases. As I mentioned, we have over 250 different products that we purchase from ABC, and if we had to buy the bulk of these in full case format, either 6 or 12 bottle cases, we limit our storage capabilities and also tie up a great deal of money in inventory that could be better spent elsewhere in our operations, as Steve alluded to. As the decline of these split case offerings continues, we are opting more and more to purchase bottles at our local package stores, which adds an additional surcharge to the 27.5% markup that we already pay. Also, there is additional time spent going to the store, purchasing the product, bringing them back to the restaurant, and as John said, that means that a manager is off duty, so that does create kind of a hole in our management team. Another issue that we have encountered is that as we hold 2 permits, both the on-premise and catering, we must maintain separation between the items that we purchase for on-premise consumption and those that we purchase for catering events. This leads to, once again, increased inventory and further limits our storage capabilities. It would seem that a solution to this would be just to designate the off-site catering permit as an addendum to our on-premise permit, and that alcohol could be designated for either use. Customer service is close to every restaurateur's heart. We recognize poor service immediately and expect excellent service due to the nature of the business that we are in. While the people employed at the office and warehouse are very polite and helpful, I've had numerous interactions with them, and they're great. The communication between ABC and the permit holders is less than exemplary. We are not notified of shipments that do not contain our complete order, when the shipments are arriving, or when items will be completely taken off inventory, as once again we just discussed. I can appreciate supply chain issues, for them are a concern. However, we should expect the same level of service from the ABC that our broadline suppliers provide to us. In every supply chain or delivery system, if the final recipient is not satisfied, a more effective delivery system is devised to ensure the continuity of product from manufacturer to consumer. The ABC is currently the weak link in that chain. The pandemic has created problems in delivery in the supply chain for virtually every facet of the restaurant industry. The ABC has not been immune from this. However, it seems that they have not had the capability to adapt the way that our food distributors and other suppliers have. This is another drawback that permit holders face. We are running businesses that are dependent upon a non-business or profit-driven entity to provide us with the products and services that we need to operate our businesses successfully. Overall, the ABC can effectively service the needs of restaurants throughout the state, provided that it can make the necessary adjustments needed to facilitate the supply, delivery, and sale of alcohol through restaurants. In its current format and execution, those needs are not being met, as the Commission has little accountability when their customers are dissatisfied. Simple surveys or customer feedback sites may be one way to ensure that this level of service is consistent with the expectations of restaurants throughout the state. However, it is vital that the Commission listen to their customers and act accordingly to their stated needs, as any operation engaged in business activity is expected to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Are there any questions? One of the things you discussed is your stock, and I guess I'll ask you the same thing that has kind of been asked of these other guests. You know, what if you kind of could be a king for the day, and you could, you know, wave your magic wand and do some things? What do you think are probably the two most important things that we could do as it relates to ABC and the functionality and dealing with the restaurateurs and the package stores and kind of the end user, so to speak,
Sure.
In this relationship?
I would say on-time delivery and the split cases. You know, if we have to go to a liquor store, which I don't mind doing for a Macallan 18 or a high-end product like that, but if I can get 3 bottles of wine or 3 bottles of something, then that makes a big difference in the inventory that we're holding. So the split case issue and a 3-day delivery, 4-day delivery turnaround would be on my wish list, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. All right. And as far as delivery, one of the options, I'm not a logistics expert by any stretch, but I've heard people talk about doing dedicated day deliveries in regions of the state. You know, is that something that, I mean, I guess if it's consistent and it's, you know, you're going to get your shipments on Tuesday, would that be something that you would?
Of course. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
I can have the staff in place ready to go, even if we have a delivery window between 4 and 6 or something like that. That would even be more helpful.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for driving over and sharing your thoughts with us today.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
Next up is Mr. Tasho Katsaboulos with Mississippi Independent Package Store Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to give input. This has been great to provide this forum for us. I'm joined with David Rushing of Joe T's, and my name is Tasho Katsaboulos, Katz Wine and Spirits, and also Mississippi Independent Package Stores Association. The number one first concern is pricing. As you make your examinations, past privatization bills have preserved the state's 27.5% while also allowing independent distributors to add markups on top of that. Such a tax increase on Mississippians would cause alcohol prices to rise approximately 35%. This would devastate our industry and the state as illegal shipments increase and also consumers flock across state lines. This would be particularly devastating for the South Haven and coastal areas, as well as the rest of the state. Regarding selection, Mississippi is already private where it counts. That is on the brokerage standpoint. So all of our selection in Mississippi is 100% decided by independent private brokerage firms. Then, on top of that, if anyone identifies a missing product, they're very welcome to go and seek the distribution rights and apply for a license to become a broker in the state. It's wide open. ABC does not do anything to dissuade anyone from obtaining any product. Most of the products that are missing in the state are missing because they are limited production. And oftentimes when a distiller or winery has something that they only have enough to, say, supply 30 states, those products just end up going to states that they have relationships with. And so it really is just down to that. The states that do not get those products, oftentimes it's not because of their underlying system. And in the case of Mississippi, it's certainly not because of the underlying system. The other important aspect to understand is that Mississippi has the smallest fine wines market in the nation. On February the 9th of 2016, the DOR reported to the Mississippi legislature that 93.07% of 750 milliliters wines sold in Mississippi cost less than $15. It's very important to understand that this is on the standard 750 milliliter bottle that most of us think of when we say wine bottle. If you were to include the jug wines, the box wines, and the 1.5 liter bottles, that's the double bottle that all of us love. That's what comes across my counter most, even at a store like mine that focuses on finer wines and craft offerings. What's selling for us are those 1.5 liter bottles. And if you bring in the sale of jug wines, box wines, and 1.5s, then the portion of the state's wine sales goes up closer to 98%, leaving us with a 2% fine wines market, which ranks last. This is incredibly important. Mississippi's 2% fine wine markets is why ABC's even pricing is crucial for retailers, wineries, and distilleries. ABC, by honoring fair play and providing even pricing to small and large entities alike, provides a healthy mix of big box competition and thoughtfully stocked specialty stores. In making your decision, please make it a point to interview small craft wineries and distilleries. You will know them if you look at a winery and they sell a bunch of products that say California on the label. That is a product that can be sourced from anywhere in the state, and the reason that they make that declaration is that they reserve the right to source the grapes from anywhere. That's more of a jug wine, bulk wine type scenario, and so avoid talking to those. Instead, focus on the ones that make offerings from Santa Cruz Mountains, Napa, Sonoma. Those that are that exclusively do small craft production will tell you the same thing. Throughout the years in working with Sante South, we've had the opportunity to talk to many small wineries, and they really love Mississippi's system because of that. So, why would the gigantic private brokerage firms that would seemingly benefit the most from privatization not recommend it for Mississippi? It's because with privatization, corporations make their volumes known and request prices on vast percentages of that volume. This unseats the three-tier system. The brokers can't stop it because they'll lose the largest brands on earth if they stand in the way. Ultimately, brokers know that corporations and their limited selections of cheap wines will dominate the market. Simultaneously, specialty shops can't survive on Mississippi's 2% market. And brokers will see their SKUs fall dramatically as Mississippi's selection deteriorates. It's very important that we maintain this three-tier separation in a state with a 2% fine wine market. Privatization, once done, can't be undone. The state's inability to relinquish its 27.5%, coupled with the small fine wines market, makes Mississippi a poor candidate for privatization. Package stores, brokers, distilleries, wineries, restaurants, consumers, and the state will benefit most from renovating the ABC operations. The first thing that I would really like to ask the committee to consider is what I consider the silver bullet that can be done right now to help the ABC. Starting pay for ABC's warehouse workers is $23,207. Also, the warehouse workers put 9% into PERS. After their other withholding taxes are deducted, this leaves a take-home pay of just $306 per week. ABC cannot recruit and retain these mission-critical employees at such a low rate. Please get these extra hard-working workers a fair living wage. When I spoke with other warehousing entities such as Budweiser, they start their people in the $35,000 to $40,000 range. It's very important because these warehouse workers are the bedrock that the performance of ABC is based on, and it's so important to get these guys a good living wage. The other thing is, as you look at renovating the ABC operations, which desperately needs to be done, there are some incredible companies out there. One such company is Encompass Technologies out of Fort Collins, Colorado. Encompass, with 600 plus installations, is the fastest growing warehouse automation system in the alcohol industry. They have recently redone Budweiser, Wyoming's ABC. They're in talks with Virginia's ABC and also many other ABC divisions. I've spoken with Encompass, and they would greatly appreciate the opportunity to fly here and present plans and output projections for the Mississippi ABC. There are a number of other great companies to look at, but I just bring Encompass up specifically because I have knowledge of them through Budweiser. Thank you.
Thank you, Tasho. One of the questions I want to ask you, so how many wineries are there in the U.S.?
Not sure.
If you had to guess, I mean, and I'm not holding you to, I don't know if it's 1,000, 2,000, 10,000?
I think it's several thousand.
So close to 10,000, you think?
I don't think that many.
Okay.
I think it'd be more in the 2,000 to 3,000 range.
2,000 to 3,000. And if a winery doesn't have a broker's license in Mississippi, how do they get their product here right now?
Well, we've actually had a really good working relationship with ABC on that. And one of the ways they can do it is get a full-blown brokerage license. But there's also a solicitor's license, which can kind of fast-track the process. And so all of the time we have wines that we identify that have really good, scores and reviews, but they're not yet in the state. And we'll often reach out to them, and they'll file one of those solicitor's license, and then we can submit a special order for them. Many times when we discover really good wineries such as that, they end up getting picked up by a broker pretty quickly because the brokers are looking at the same things we are when we do research, for what products we want to sell.
So a current broker that has a license in Mississippi, they can just pick them up like a line?
Yes, it has to be mutual, but if they come to an agreement, there's nothing at all to preclude that.
So it would be a quick way of getting product here if you had a independent broker and there was a ABC wine out there, and they didn't have a broker's license in Mississippi, but they wanted to get product here, they could go make an arrangement with the broker and start providing that product in Mississippi through that.
Yes, and some of the wineries that I was mentioning that we get in fast-tracked on a solicitor's permit, the ABC will actually help us steward that process. So our working relationship with ABC throughout the years has been outstanding.
Okay. And I know this past session, and I know that you've kind of worked on this, and we've gone back and forth on several different iterations and finally passed a shipping law that allows us to ship wine into Mississippi. Give us kind of your perspective. And I know this is probably a very small segment of the market that's going to be out there, but what does that do for you or for your customers that if there's something that they can find that, like you said, 30% or, their wine's going to go to 30 states. Does that give you does that help you give the added opportunity to bring that wine in if they don't have a broker's license?
Yes, this is a very good change for Mississippians. So oftentimes, let's take it farther from looking at a winery that only has enough for 30 states, and let's look at a winery that doesn't even sell any to states. They're mailing list only, cult wines. And a lot of times when consumers come in complaining about a missing item, it's those types of wines. And so, I tell consumers all the time that complain about something such as that not being in Mississippi, look, if you can get it, go get it and get your brokerage license because you'll make a fortune. But those types of items can easily be obtained now from consumers who are members of those mailing lists. And so when we get asked about those types of items now, instead of saying, we can't help you, I can inform them, whereas I can't buy it because it's mailing list only, you can now get on that mailing list, obtain the rights to buy it yourself, and then do it through our store. And we haven't had one yet, but the idea is to make it a similar charge, such as what we charge restaurants, a roughly 10%.
Well, that's good you haven't had one yet, because it doesn't go into effect until January, I believe.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so, well, that's helpful. And so, we're looking at roughly about a 2% fine wine market. What's the average for a state?
I'm not sure.
Or do you know of any other states, like what would Alabama or Louisiana or Arkansas or Tennessee? I mean, do you have any information on any other states besides us? I mean, how far off are we? Is it pretty much because of population and just economics, or is it,
I'm not sure
Mississippi's
what
just
the
not a
reason
fine wine
for
state?
it is. I'm sure it's, economics, but I can get back to you and do a little research on that.
Okay. All right. Are there any other 8,000 wineries? Thank you.
I've got a question, if y'all can hear me, just to kind of follow up, because this is what that piqued my interest when you said that Mississippi has the smallest fine wine market in the country. Did you say that?
Yes.
Okay, 2%. And were you just stating facts, or were you advocating that's good, bad, indifferent?
Well, I just feel like it's something that we need to be mindful of in maintaining the three-tier system to ensure that competition and pricing stays even. Because, for example, the wines that I carry, they're in the $30, $40, $50 range and up to $200. I carry those items as a convenience to my customers because I care about the perception of my store and its market position. I do not make a lot of money off those wines because of carrying cost. They cost a lot of money to buy a full case of those. They sit there for, the turn rate is not anywhere near the cheaper wines. And so, because of that, they're not incredibly profitable wines. We do that as a customer service. And if large corporations take control of the wines that we pay the electric bills with, they're not going to extend the same courtesy to their customers to carry a bunch of high-end items. And so the even pricing in a market like Mississippi's is really important because it creates a healthy mix. It preserves, consumer choice and having both inexpensive bulk wines and also, fine wines in the marketplace as well.
Well, I appreciate that, and Chairman Harkins kind of hit on this, and won't elaborate too much on it, but with a 2% fine wine market, and I think you mentioned earlier you thought there was a couple thousand wineries in the country. I had previous knowledge that it was a lot more than that. It's somewhere around 8,000. So we had hearings back during the session and learned some of this information. And I want to say that the numbers, and these are approximations, but there's only roughly half, or not quite half, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 of those wineries actually do business with Mississippi ABC. And so that was kind of one of the main factors in pushing the policy change that we pushed, really driven by consumer demand, and allowing Representative Horan or whoever it may be to order from a small boutique farm in California or Oregon or wherever that may be, and access that product that, quite honestly, you couldn't access in Mississippi. And the ones that were accessing it were doing it illegally. They were shipping to a doorstep in Memphis or New Orleans or Mobile or wherever. So, and that was going on. And I hope this curtails that a lot. But from your industry's perspective, that a good thing?
I'm not sure. I don't understand exactly the question.
Okay, well, the question is, really, I guess I want your perspective on how we grow the 2% fine wine market in Mississippi.
How do we
will
grow
the
it?
recent policy changes assist with that?
Okay, so many of the wineries that are not represented here it's simply because the private brokerage firms have not decided to pick them up. I think they probably relate their product mix to the demand, and when a broker has X amount of wineries at a certain price point, then I assume they get to a point of equilibrium with it where they feel they have enough of that price point represented. So I'd say there's probably more wineries at each price point than any particular broker would want. And so I feel like this is something that's already being steered by private industry. And anything that's not picked up, we now have the solution for consumers to come directly and order what they want.
That answers my question. Thank you. Representative Horan, I think you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. I want to ask you, do you have the same challenges within the spirit market that you have within the wine market as far as products?
As far as the
Getting products, I've heard of this whiskey called Blanton's. I've heard of that. But if I were to leave right now and somebody in my family wanted some Blanton's to take to Grenada, would you have it on your shelf today?
I would not.
Okay, and what are the challenges? I'm just using that as an example. Are there challenges within the spirit market with everything's not accessible, and why is that way?
There's not enough fine bourbon to go around, and this is a big problem for every state. It has nothing to do with any problems with our underlying system, but yes, there's an extreme bourbon shortage. The way that the bourbon houses
Well, that's a big problem in my mind.
it is a big problem. The way the bourbon houses are handling their allocations, the brokers are rewarding the stores that do a lot of volume with them with those items. And so it really depends on each individual store's volume of certain items that decide whether or not they get those bourbons.
All right, and you mentioned something. I want to ask you this just because I'm a little confused about one thing. If I go, let's say, to Denver and I get a bottle of wine at a restaurant, or I go to my brother's house out there and he's got a wine, but they don't sell it in Mississippi, can I get a case of that, or is there there's no limit? I mean, some way, somehow, you can get access to that wine. Is that a fair statement, or can you answer that?
I would say under our current system that nothing impedes that. That said, you still have to have two sides come together and agree on, a brokerage percentage.
Right, but there's no way that a consumer could say, I want 2 cases from California at this small winery. There's just no way to do that because.
Well, in January, when
the change comes.
When the change happens, then you would be able to come to a store like mine or any other and, request that item. I think the way it's crafted, the consumer places the order, and lets the package store know that they're going to use their shipping address, or perhaps it goes to ABC first. I'm not exactly sure, can't remember how that bill was exactly crafted, but in the end, the consumer places the order, they pick it up from a package store so that we can do the proper age verification and collect the money for the state.
So getting to another point that you made, basically what you're saying is that your fear is that the privatization of the process is going to basically eliminate a large number of independent package store owners. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And I also think that it will dry up the selection of fine wines in the states. Currently, when we get a wine spectator or enthusiast and we see something that's classified as a best buy, and those are generally $10 or $12 wines. Those items generally, when we price them out in Mississippi, end up roughly where they should be. We're not that much higher over where they're typically listed in those publications. But in a privatized scenario, if Mississippi preserves its 27.5%, then those $12 best buys are now going to be 15-ish, dollar bottles. And so that will be greatly out of step with what the national wine publications are estimating the retail to be. It will make that out of step.
Your perimeter stores are going to suffer sooner than everyone else, I assume. I'm talking about South Haven, the coast.
Yeah, as well as, in theory, Meridian, although it's closer to Alabama and their prices are higher, but certainly Vicksburg area, South Haven, the coast, those areas especially.
You said it's 2% fine wine, and I assume that would be somewhere above $15 north of that.
Yes, I believe that the figure was 15
Has it gone up? Did it used to be 1% and it's 2% now? Has it always been generally 2% for the last 15 to 20 years?
I'm not sure about that because I've only run those numbers some time ago when these first figures came out in 2006. And so it's, or 2016 rather. And so it's been a while since I've run those numbers, but it was 93.07% on the standard 750, not including any of the other tank wines.
We had a question a while ago. I want to ask you this: what percentage of your sales are to restaurants?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not a really big restaurant wholesaler, but I would think it would be somewhere around 7 or 8%. Some stores do massive restaurant wholesaling because they have delivery programs, but I don't have a delivery program.
So if we were looking at the restaurant business through ABC, we'd have to include the percentage that was coming through the independent brokers in addition to coming straight out of ABC.
Yes.
If we wanted to know what that number was, an accurate number, because a large number of their bottles, the split bottles or small orders are going to come from the package store and pay that surcharge, correct? So if we were looking at giving the restaurant some industry some access to an individual there at ABC, to know whether or not that's something we need to do, we'd have to look at both numbers, correct?
That's correct. And one thing is the ABC has been extremely open for us. We meet with them as an association, and I believe that the Restaurant Association would have that same opportunity. But having a dedicated person, to look out for their interest is certainly warranted because the restaurants represent such an important part of the state's economy, and they have concerns that are a little bit different than ours.
And it helps your business too for someone to go in a restaurant and try a wine there with the meal, then come back and maybe a higher end wine or something that you carry they want to take home. It
helps us tremendously that the restaurants buy from us. Because I talked a little bit earlier about the fine wines and how they kind of tend to sit there and our carrying costs eat us alive. The saving grace for us in that, in a lot of instances, is our restaurants clients creating some turn there that wouldn't otherwise be there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Casaboulas, you are saying that you don't favor privatization because you think that it would disrupt the pricing structure that currently exists?
Yes, I feel like, just looking at past privatization bills, the ones that I've read in the past that have been submitted have preserved the state's 27.5, and then also included the private brokerage firms' markups on top of that. And if that were to happen, I do not believe that consumers would enjoy the marketplace that they do today.
Okay. But you do offer a couple of suggestions in terms of improving the operations of ABC, getting better salaries for employees, and some efficiencies through modernization or bringing in a company. You mentioned Encompass as a possibility to help with some efficiencies.
Definitely. You know, the number one thing to me is to make sure that ABC's salaries are appropriate for mission-critical employees. The ABC is so important to the state, and to give ABC salaries that make it easy to recruit and retain quality people, to me, that's just an immediate silver bullet that you guys can consider. It's just very important that they be able to compete with Levi's and Nissan and Budweiser and the other warehousing industries in the area. They need comparable salaries because right now they recruit those people and they've got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. As soon as they get them trained up and invest all of that time in interviewing and searching and training, and they end up losing them to another job. And that type of a just revolving door is exhausting for ABC's leadership. The leadership at ABC it's really remarkable that they're getting done what they're getting done with the resources available to them. On the front of the modernizing, when the ABC's conveyor systems were installed some years ago, I'm not sure how long ago, but it's my understanding that a portion of the conveyors actually go in front of some of the bay doors. And so the conveyor system itself was installed in a way that fit the volume back then, but today it actually precludes the receiving capacity of the warehouse. And so, you know, through a friend at Budweiser, I got turned on to Encompass and called them, you know, just to talk to them about, you know, what they could do for an entity like that. And they were saying that generally, on average, they find that they can increase output and pick rates around 5 times. And that's on average. If we assume, I would say that my guess would be that ABC's output and efficiency is below average. And so that increase could even be even greater. And Encompass is extremely interested in coming here. Their work with the Wyoming ABC has already begun. They're at the implementation stage. And so that they're already in there, and then they said that they're very close with Virginia. And everyone knows Virginia has a very successful ABC operation, so that's also encouraging that Virginia's looking at Encompass as well. But there's also many others. The brokers also have done many monster warehouse operations, new modern warehouse operations throughout the country, and many of them also have some names that they want to submit for potentially getting a RFP by the legislature.
Any estimate of costs or something like that?
Not at all. When I spoke with Encompass, they started asking me a lot of questions that I don't know the answers to. And so Encompass did say that they're willing to fly here and speak to you guys initially without the benefit of a bunch of figures. And then if it's something that you want to explore further, they can come back once they're giving a bunch of data and give a formal proposal. And I'm sure the other companies would be the same.
And on yesterday, Commissioner Graham mentioned that there's a 100-case limit or a maximum that stores are able to get? Has that had an adverse impact on your business?
Not particularly. That generally falls within what we sell. Also, ABC went back and looked at the pre-COVID numbers for the bigger stores, and they awarded those stores 150 cases. And so the effort from ABC was to, by placing the limit, was to ensure that the panic buying didn't lead to small stores getting choked out. And then by also looking at past volumes, setting certain stores that needed it at 150 cases, also made sure that those stores would still get served according to their pre-COVID levels. So the limitations have been mostly focused on maintaining the pre-COVID environment, because ABC's operations struggled to serve the excess demand created by the panic buying, which is really a COVID thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Real quick for Senator Blackwell, on the 150 case limit, is that per order?
Yes.
And if you make a 150 case order on a Monday, can you make another 150 case order on Tuesday and another 150 case order on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the 2% fine wines, which I think merits further discussion. We've had over the last few years, we've had a number of bills that have been submitted to put wine in grocery stores, which in effect would be in grocery stores, convenience stores, drug stores, pretty much almost any retail operation. Part of the argument is that they'd only sell the cheaper wines, but your testimony is that that's the bulk of the wines that you sell. And again, their premise is while they'll sell just the cheaper wines, and the sophisticated consumer will come to your store to purchase the higher end wines. Could you elaborate a little bit on your thoughts and the membership that you represent, their perspective on that?
Yes. If corporations are given multiple permits or allowed to sell in grocery stores, those sales will represent the vast predominance of what pays the bills at stores like ours. We rely on those sales nearly exclusively to be able to bring the finer wines to market as a customer service. Without those sales, we cannot exist.
You obviously represent a good number of stores, and I imagine your membership is growing. Could you tell the committee here what's the, I guess, perspective with multiple, because that's one of the other components of these bills, is that we'll let you have multiple licenses so you can have multiple stores. Is that what your membership wants?
No, not at all. The multiple permits in wine and grocery or privatization, those things unseat even pricing. And anything that unseats even pricing in a state like Mississippi, if you understand how frail our fine wines market is, will limit consumer choice, drive down selection. This is why the brokers that I've talked to are all in favor of modernizing ABC, but keeping the situation like it is. The brokers can't stand in the way. If these big corporate entities come here, they will be able to achieve lower pricing, but it will only be on certain items. Those certain items, and I think it's really important to note that that doesn't include all cheap wines. It just includes the ones that they put in their portfolio. If you Google the name of any big corporation, plus federal regulators, plus wine, their hometown newspapers will tell you all you need to know. The sourcing of the leveraging of their buying power to get the inexpensive prices is what undoes the three-tier system, unlevels the marketplace, and puts people like our stores out of business, and would make Mississippi's consumers too reliant on corporations to provide fine wines. It would be really, truly devastating for our system. And if anyone opens up that door, you can't shut it once you walk through it. So it's definitely a situation to proceed with great care, because I know that this committee wants to keep a good fine wines market in Mississippi.
Thank you. Another argument of the proponents for that bill suggests that, I know in Tennessee they let package stores start selling beer, food items. Is that in lines with what your membership wants?
Not at all. We're not at all interested in getting into the grocery store game, just like we don't want them to take over the entire market.
Okay. And then I'm not sure the number of licenses that the ABC has, but I know it's probably in the 650 range. So if something were to pass to allow wine in almost any retail operation, it could potentially triple or quadruple the number of licenses. So where would that put the warehouse, their capability, if that were to happen?
It wouldn't be good, that's for sure. Obviously, the state needs to take care of ABC and shore up its operations to meet demand. With grocers and multiple permits, the need would be exponential, but the damage to the marketplace wouldn't be worth doing it anyway. But even the way we are now, a lot needs to be done for ABC, and it's no surprise it hasn't had, an upgrade in quite a while. So I think that's really straightforward. The main thing that, troubles me for the right here and now is the pay. I really, can't understand, why the pay is so low for those warehouse workers. And I do think that's an immediate silver bullet to, get those guys some relief and make the current ABC, even without renovation, immediately run much better with competitive wages.
Tasha, I wasn't going to go here, but to help me understand, not talking about wine and grocery stores, but why would your business, or is your business, and if so, if your answer is yes, why would you be against still a limited number of permits, but an increased number, say, 1 to 3, 1 to 2?
No,
help me understand why.
We would be against any increase in permits because of the market, because of the fine wines market. As soon as the permits go from 1 to 3, keep in mind, we're not just talking about a few entities that are interested in this. In addition to Costco, Sam's, Walmart, Kroger, you also have Walgreens, CVS, grocery, convenience stores. Any entity, could then have the scalability that they needed to bring in 3 stores. And you immediately allow corporations to take control of the inexpensive jug/tank wines that represent so much of our marketplace, unfortunately, and it would destroy our fine wine market. That's the only reason the brokers are on our side. In a state where, let's say you have a 30-40% fine wine markets, the brokers will tell you quickly that they wouldn't be with us. They are, with us because of how frail our fine wines market. So to give corporations scalability in Mississippi, such as 3 permits, would have the same effect.
Not so much you don't want 2 stores. You don't want the effects that would cause on your market to take place, is that right?
Yes, you know, just speaking as a consumer of wine, I want Mississippi to have a robust selection of fine wines. So speaking as a consumer alone, I believe that giving corporations that kind of scalability would bring too many into the game at too high of a level. And when that happens, stores like mine won't be able to pay the bills to sell the fine wines.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you so
Tasha,
much.
for being here. All right, our last presenter, Mr. Kirby Boatler, wine broker. We can ask some of those questions to Mr. Boatler.
Thank you all for letting me be here. My name is Kirby Boatler. I own Pelor Wine Brokers. We are a small niche wine brokerage. So that's all we cover is small production, fantastic small winery wines from all over the world. So France, Austria, Germany, California, everywhere. And I just kind of took a few notes listening to others and what they were saying. And I kind of had, Steve and I were talking about a small winery that I represent in California. They have one product that they produce 137 cases total production a year. That's it. And we have it here in Mississippi. So getting wines here is more of the supplier, you know, suggesting that they don't want to be here. Perhaps Mississippi's not on their market or whatnot, but it's really their decision. I go after small producers all the time and love them for what they do. My family's a farm family in Mississippi, so I know what it's like to be a small farmer. Just a few points, and I kind of broke it up. In terms of bailment orders, bailment easier than special orders. Commissioner Bartlett yesterday mentioned that. Today, special orders, I can take a truck from California to Mississippi faster and get it to the store faster than bailment orders are getting to the store today that are sitting out at the Gluckstadt warehouse. So if that gives you any kind of idea on how backed up the ABC is right now, it's substantial. But I would relate that more to technology. Today, if I have a customer place an order for a bailment item, I can't track that. I have no way of knowing what customer placed that order for a bailment item. And so I don't know who my customer is. And when you're in business, that's a really hard pill to swallow when you don't even know who to thank for ordering your product. Delisting, I think that's probably fairly easy to solve. Brokers are notified ahead of time of their items that are going to be delisted. Perhaps the ABC would send that same list out to restaurants. Problem solved. Warehouse pickup from the ABC. We talked about, someone had a question earlier for someone, on picking up from the ABC. So I've asked, we are a customer service centered organization, and so I've asked the ABC if we can pick up orders. My guess is, staffing up there right now, and commissioners, you guys are working hard, and we all know that, so thank you for that. But really, I would say it's a function of technology and the way in which we can track orders. Today, it seems there are two systems in the ABC for placing an order. There's the taxpayer access point, that if you're a business owner, you're familiar with, and you place orders through a taxpayer system for wine. Not probably the best way of doing it, but then there's a PO system that retail order is tied to. So the retail order is placed by Stephen or Tasha or whoever through TAP. Then the ABC, it seems, manually takes that order and pulls it over into a PO system, and that PO gets sent to the supplier for a special order. And so the supplier receives that PO. Well, I can't tie a PO to a retail order. So when the supplier ships, I don't know whose wine they've shipped. So it's really just an integration piece there that really ought to be solved through technology. And really going to PERS and the idea of raising salaries at the ABC, no doubt they deserve it. Those men and women out there are working hard every single day for us, but they don't have the tools. And if you're showing up to a job and you don't have the tools, it's really hard to get that job done. And so it's compounded on them, and I'm no doubt it's frustrated them. The working conditions of the ABC, the warehouse is not refrigerated. When you look at fine wines in Mississippi, that's challenging. If you have a wine that sits out there for a week, or 2 or 3 weeks under current conditions, having a non-refrigerated warehouse is not up to industry standard, and it'll kill the wine. It'll destroy the wine before it gets out there. Not only that, but Mississippi summers aren't exactly cool. And so you can imagine how those warehouse workers feel out there working every single day in that environment. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I just kind of wanted to touch on those things. And under PERS, if we could raise those salaries and then incentivize the warehouse workers, in a way in which less breakage, faster picks, whatever the thing is, to incentivize them to be a little bit faster and more efficient, I think that's the way it could work a lot better. But again, commissioners, thank you all for what you guys do. I know y'all are working hard, but just got to get the tools to you. And thank you all. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Boatler? All right, thank you, Kirby,
Sure.
excuse me.
Tell me a little bit about who you represent. When you broker wines, who are your customers?
So specifically, just small suppliers from around the world. Pfeiffer Pavitt, for example, in Napa Valley, Calistoga. She sits on roughly 27.5 acres of land, small family farm. She's out there doing crush in October, herself. She comes to Mississippi and supports the market. And we've had really good reception for her stuff here, and she's very, very small. 2,500 cases a year over her whole varietal composition of production.
Broker her product with who? Restaurants, package stores?
Restaurants and package stores and casinos. Mm-hmm.
How many, we talked about the 8,000 number earlier. There you go. How many roughly of those don't do business in Mississippi? And why that is, I think you may have hinted to it earlier, that that's not their business model.
I can give you a prime example of this. The same winery that I was speaking to earlier that produces 137 cases total production of one particular wine. She also produces a bourbon, right, in Kentucky. And that distillery has been unwilling. Mississippi has just not been on their roadmap. And quite honestly, when we go to market and sell wine, the vast majority of my suppliers are really shocked at Mississippi's consumption and our taste for finer wines, And so particularly heavy wines, Cab seems to be playing really heavy right now in Mississippi. And so those producers are really shocked. So I think Mississippi is somewhat of a hidden gem, and some people are like, why Mississippi? Why are you going to Mississippi? And so I think suppliers just don't know how successful they could be here.
How is the brokerage market in Mississippi? Are there a lot of people that do what you do, or just a few of y'all?
Just a few, yeah. I mean, it's primarily made up of the larger brokerages, RNDC, Gallo, Southern Glaciers, the big heavy hitters, and then you've got just a few of folks like me. So maybe 5 to 10. I couldn't give you a number really.
Thank you.
Senator Chasnow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kirby, would you say that Mississippi is an emerging market for wine consumption?
Absolutely.
Haven't we consistently over the years been a beer state?
I would say so, probably. I'm not familiar with the beer industry, but.
So alcohol's only been legal in Mississippi since, 1966, but it's been consumed here before that time, has it not?
Sure.
So I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about the wines, because being somewhat older than most of you, I can remember when you wouldn't have the average man sit around and talk about wine or drink wine. They might perhaps have a cocktail, bourbon, or a drink of beer, but this wine business is pretty new to Mississippi. Have you seen a considerable growth, not just in the more popular, less expensive wines, but as well as the high dollar wines that represent 2% of our market?
Yes, Senator, I would say it's largely a factor of education for Mississippians.
Yeah.
And, it's really on the broker in a lot of senses. It's also on the package store. Tasho, for example, does a great job at his store. Stephen O'Neill at Manship does a great job of educating consumers. Do that through wine dinners and that sort of thing. And then we also bring the supplier or the wine maker to market here in Mississippi and do wine dinners. So I think it's largely a factor of education as well.
So you think that perhaps this emerging market will have I'm interested because I chair the tourism committee. Do you think it will have an effect on the types of tourists that now come to Mississippi as opposed to the ones who came maybe prior to the casinos and the types of restaurants that have developed through that venue?
Well, and also distilleries. I mean, you can't forget them too. We do
true.
have distilleries here in Mississippi, so yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Senator Horn.
Just a quick question, your ideas regarding privatization.
Yeah, I would just kind of reflect the sentiments that have been said earlier. I would be against privatization. The ABC is a good thing for me, being a small broker. They handle the logistics part of it for me, and I can focus on, customer service and customers. Just if we can get them the tools that they need, I think it's critical.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Kirby, one of the things we had talked about earlier was the wine shipment bill that we passed this past session. How does that impact you? What are your thoughts on having that now as a tool for the consumer? What does that do? Does that allow you to talk to some of your wineries, and does that even play a role in your business?
It does to an extent. It's actually a good thing because people will go out there and they will look for wines that they can't find, and so they'll have kind of the niche effect on consumers' preferences. And I think that they will go out there, and if they found my winery out there, something that's represented here, and they joined the wine club, for example, then Pfeiffer Pavitt, for example, they limit a consumer to a certain number of cases a year anyway, as part of being in their wine club because they are a small producer. And so there's only a certain amount that even you could get direct shipped to you. The rest of it is going to be me. And back to the conversation about the 137 case production wine, we're the only state in the entire country that can sell it for retail. We're it. And that's because of my relationship with the winery.
Okay.
We sell their other wines, and I begged and pleaded. And
So they sell 137 cases. Do they allot all? How much do they allot to Mississippi?
They produce 137 cases, total production. So there's no more after that. They allot around 20 cases to Mississippi.
Okay, and the rest they sell through their
Direct to consumer.
When you do 137 cases, I imagine your price point's a lot higher than most. What does a typical bottle run?
In a restaurant, $400 and something. I think.
How much?
$400 and something a bottle.
Okay.
I think it's someone here has it by the glass. I think it's $125 a glass.
I'm sorry. Say that again. On the per glass.
$125.
$125. Okay. All right. So that's not your daddy's.
It's the Friday, Saturday special occasion wine for sure.
Yeah.
Not Monday and Tuesday.
Good deal. All right. Are there any other questions from the committee? Senator Blackwell.
Question to the chair when.
Okay. All right. Kirby, thank you for being here and presenting. Thank you for what you do.
Thank y'all.
All right. Senator Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question for the chair. We've heard some testimony in the last 2 days about the impact that COVID has had on the warehouse. Do you think the ABC would qualify for any COVID relief funds from the legislature?
Mr. Commissioner.
I'm certainly not the state auditor or the inspector general, but I do think there's a window that the warehouse could use some COVID funds. One of your big challenges will probably be complying with the timelines that apply to the funds. If the federal Congress does not change the timelines, we could have some issues. But yes, I do think some of the expenses that we have incurred related to overtime directly attributable to COVID, and some other costs probably are. Capital expenses, I think we would have to study that a little closer to really figure it out. And then you have do we have the time to spend COVID money on capital type expenses? I know there's some guidance that the U.S. Department of Treasury has put out on capital expenses. I think we'd have to examine that very closely to figure out if some of what we need to do out there could qualify, but certainly we would look at it. But I do think there are some expenses that we have incurred at the warehouse that you could say are attributable to COVID and directly attributable to COVID. And I think we would have to double and triple check that before we spent the money. But yes, I do think that those funds could be available for some of the expenses.
Any other questions? Okay. Commissioner, do you or Meg have any kind of response or anything y'all want to add to the conversation today? I know you've heard from obviously the restaurateurs and the package stores and the wine brokers and everyone. This certainly is not a meeting to pile on by any means, but I think it's just an opportunity to give them the floor to kind of just give you their perspective on things. But is there anything that y'all would like to add or comment on?
No, sir. We appreciate their comments, and one thing I've tried to explain to everyone, and I think this attitude existed before I started working out there as well, and you can see it by the people who've interacted with the department. The department is very interested in customer service, and will always be responsive. We've had multiple meetings since I started with different groups. We will continue to do so. We will continue to try to respond to any types of complaints, recognizing we're not going to be perfect, but we do want to be responsive whenever we hear things. And so we'll be following up with some of the things we've heard today, and we encourage others to reach out to us as well. But we appreciate all the comments that all the people have come forward and given today. There are a lot of good ideas floating around, and you all have an important and perhaps tough decision as you all try to decide what the policy is going to be going forward. But we appreciate the opportunity to have participated, and we look forward to providing what I'm sure is going to be information that you all need to help make your decisions as you go forward.
Yeah, what I think, and obviously the committee can chime in as well, but I think we'd like to pursue looking at some of these options and getting some concrete information on what does it cost to retrofit the warehouse? What costs would be associated, and what type of implementation will we be looking at to modernize the warehouse? Secondly, we'll obviously have to look at what are the options as far as management of it. How does that look? I mean, we've got different ideas. Different states that are control states have done different things. So, whether we keep it the same, but y'all make adjustments from within, obviously taking some of the considerations that you've heard here today, whether it's putting an RFP out and looking at what can be done, whether it's utilizing the lottery corporation style corporation vehicle to do this, what opportunities does that present? I think we just need to kind of put our heads together and try to come up with something, and maybe we can reconvene in November and discuss some of those items before the session starts. Anything you want to add? Does anybody from the committee have anything they want to add, or anyone? All right. Well, if there's nothing else, this meeting is concluded. Thank you all for attending.